My name's Louise Hall and I'm Head of Events for Opportunity Now and Race for Opportunity, and I also manage the Times Top 50 Employers for Women list and the Opportunity Now Awards. I'll start this session with a presentation which will last for around 30 minutes, which will run through an overview of the entry process. If you have any questions, you can type them in using the question or the chat function at any time during the presentation, and I'll pick those up and respond at the end. We'll be circulating a copy of these slides after the webinar, and they'll also be available to download from the Opportunity Now website. So for those of you who haven't encountered us before, Opportunity Now is the Women at Work campaign from Business in the Community, which is a registered charity, and Business in the Community stands for Responsible Business. Opportunity Now aims to increase women's success at work because it's not only good for business, it's good for society too, and we've been campaigning on this agenda for more than 20 years. We work with a membership of more than 200 of the UK's most significant employers to help them create diverse and inclusive workplaces. Our campaigning activities are currently focused on creating a better gender balance for leadership, unbiased recognition and reward for all, and agile work cultures that are fit for the future. One of the key ways that we work is by sharing best practice, and we've been recognising and celebrating organisations who are making progress for almost 2 decades now with the Opportunity Now Awards. The awards recognise areas of specific best practice, so they focus on particularly impactful or inspirational programmes, initiatives or individuals. In 2011, Opportunity Now formed a partnership with the Times newspaper to compile an annual list of the top 50 employers for women in the UK. The list differs from the awards in that it considers overall performance, and it recognises organisations that can demonstrate excellence more broadly across their entire activity relating to this agenda. These two processes run in parallel and they're streamlined into a single entry process. The results are also released in tandem with award winners announced at the Opportunity Now Awards dinner, and the Times Top 50 Employers for Women is published in a special supplement in the Times newspaper, which comes out the following day. We're delighted to be embarking on a new partnership with Nationwide Building Society in 2014, who will be our award sponsors for the next 3 years. Nationwide is a committed supporter of Opportunity Now and attained recognition as a top 50 employer for women in 2013, and in addition it ranked in the top 10 of private sector organisations for both the Opportunity Now and Race for Opportunity benchmarks in 2012. Its stand on responsible business practice was clearly illustrated earlier this year when it withdrew advertising from Facebook due to content on the site which was misogynist and featured violence against women. We're also delighted to be working with the CIPD, UN Women UK, the Government Equalities Office and Cranfield School of Management as award category partners. Most of these categories are open for entry and I'll be touching on them later in the presentation. However, the FTSE award categories, of which there are 2, the Female FTSE 100 Award and the FTSE Female Pipeline Award, are based on the findings of the annual Female FTSE 100 Index, which is published by Cranfield, and so these 2 categories aren't open for entry. Moving on to the entry process itself, entry is by self-nomination via a single entry form, and that allows entrants to be considered for both the Top 50 and the Opportunity Now Awards. There isn't a charge for entry, and we were keen not to impose a fee on participation, so we cover the costs for running the Times Top 50 Employers for Women by the sale of advertising in the newspaper supplement. Further details regarding this profile opportunity will be available soon. The criteria for entry is pretty straightforward. Any organisation with a UK presence and activity can submit. As an extra note, organisations with subsidiaries can enter either as a group or as a separate business unit, but it's not possible to put forward an entry for both. The submission is structured around 4 sections, and all 4 sections have to be completed in order for the submission to be accepted. Section 1 requires a description of the organisation, the industry and sector in which it operates, and the gender profile of its workforce. This section isn't scored directly, but it's referred to during assessment and provides the assessors with important information about the context of the organisation, the sector in which it operates, its scale, and where the women are within its workforce. I think it's probably worth providing a note on confidentiality at this point. The information provided in your entry form will not be shared or reproduced in the public domain. The gender profile data remains confidential to Opportunity Now and will be strictly used for the purposes of assessment only. On occasion, we may provide content relating to the best practice that you've shared in your narrative answers with the Times editorial team in the development of supplement content, and you'll be contacted by the editorial team in advance if the Times wish to develop a case study of your organisation for publication. Section 2 of the entry explores the activities that the organisation is involved in the context of its workforce, its policies and practices as an employer, and what impact these activities are having on women and the organisation's performance and culture. And this section accounts for 50% of the overall score. Section 3 explores the activities that the organisation is involved in which benefit or impact on women who are not its current employees. So stakeholders such as clients and customers or service users and women in the community. And this section accounts for 25% of the overall score. And Section 4 requires a case study example of a programme or initiative or which describes the work of an individual or champion. Case studies must link to one of the award categories, which I'll be talking about shortly. One case study is mandatory, but if you have an additional piece of work that you'd like to be considered for an award, you can opt to submit a second. It does need to be in a different category, however. The case study section counts for 25% of the overall score, and particularly effective or innovative case studies may also be shortlisted for an award. If 2 case studies are submitted, it will be the highest scoring case study that counts towards your final total score. In terms of assessment for the top 50, we'll be looking at performance across the whole entry form. So a final score is generated from the scores in all sections, whilst the awards are drawn from high scoring case studies in just Section 4. In terms of entry content, each section takes the diversity change model as a framework for the questions asked. This is a framework that Opportunity Now has used to help organisations measure their progress with regard to gender diversity, and it's split into 3 headings. Motivate, which explores why your organisation is committed to this agenda, why it believes it's of benefit, and how your leaders are driving it forward. Act, which looks at the different range of activities that your organisation is engaged in. And Impact, which asks for evidence of what has been achieved, so the impact of the activity on women and on the organisation, and how the activity is measured, monitored, and learned from. Just a few other significant points to highlight. Don't forget the women. We appreciate that your activities may have a broader diversity reach, and it will be relevant for you to tell us about that in your entry, and some of your programs and initiatives may not just focus on women. But for the purposes of this entry, we need to understand your activities as they relate to an impact on women specifically, so you need to focus that gender lens. The list recognises employers in the UK, and as such, please ensure that the information that you provide is particularly relevant to activity and achievements within this region. As with the previous point, we appreciate that some programs and initiatives will have a broader, more global reach, and that it will be appropriate to cover this in the entry. But wherever possible, please provide UK details, and when providing evidence of impact, UK data. If the information isn't UK based, or it's not clear in the entry that the data is from the UK, it may affect your score on that question. There may be other colleagues who could contribute useful information which would strengthen your entry. You might find it helpful to consult with other departments such as HR, talent management, women's or other relevant employee networks, training or PR and communications departments. You also should ensure that your entry is anonymous. Most obviously, don't use your organisation's name throughout the entry, but also avoid references that would easily identify it. For example, don't use the names of individuals, particularly if they're very senior and therefore very high profile. Similarly, if you have established programs that will be recognised by those in the diversity sphere, avoid using the program's name. Think about what it will be useful for the assessors to understand about the context of the point that you're making. So in terms of your organisation's description, for instance, you may want to convey what the scale of your organisation is, if there are particular challenges associated with your sector, etc. What is most relevant for the assessor to take into account in order to appreciate your particular approach on these issues. Stick to plain English, so don't use acronyms or terminology that someone outside of your organisation would not be familiar with. And you'll be assessed entirely on the text responses of your entry form. So supporting materials aren't required at this stage, and please don't send us additional materials or use hyperlinks to further information in your answers. There's one exception to this, which is the Transparency Award. This is an additional category which you can enter, which sits outside of the Times Top 50 entry form, and I'll talk about a bit more about that shortly. Word count will be strictly monitored to ensure that everybody has a fair and equal chance. You may find that bullet points can help you to present your information clearly and concisely. The online entry platform will track and display your word count across each section. If you exceed the word count, your entry will not be accepted. It will be returned and you'll be asked to edit it. We've increased the word count this year in sections 2 and for case studies. So the word count breakdown is 3,000 words for section 2, 1,000 words for section 3, and 1,000 words per case study. And that information is clearly included on the entry platform as well. And finally, it's worth noting that we're not expecting a perfect score. The questions are thorough. We wanted to ensure that the process was robust and credible. If you find some of the questions challenging, remember that no one will be doing everything perfectly. Everyone will have strengths and weaknesses. So you may have an average score for one question or section, but you may do brilliantly in another. So don't let a difficult question put you off. We'd like to help you to submit the best entry that you can, and so detailed guidance has been provided. We've already circulated a copy of the information and guidance document. All the information in this document is also replicated on the online entry platform so that you can have everything at your fingertips as you're completing your submission. Do have a look at this information as a starting point. It runs through the structure and format of the entry process. It contains some general overall guidance points which will be relevant to bear in mind as you're completing all of the sections. And in addition, it includes a detailed question breakdown for sections 2 and 3 to help you focus each individual answer. It also contains descriptors and specific guidance for case studies and categories in section 4. If you completed the benchmarking survey this year, additional guidance has been provided which highlights where content overlaps across these two processes. You may find it useful to review some of the answers you provided for your benchmarking survey, as some of the content may be relevant to your award submission as well. Our Diversity Advisor team are also on hand to answer questions. If you're currently working with a Diversity Advisor as a member, then feel free to get in touch with them directly. Otherwise, don't hesitate to call me in the first instance, and I'll be glad to help or to put you in touch with another member of the team as best fits your inquiry. If you'd find past examples of use, winning and shortlisting case studies from last year's awards are available on the Opportunity Now website, where you can also find the full supplement from last year. And again, please don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions, no matter how big or small, at any stage of your entry. As I mentioned, the detailed guidance for each question has been provided in both the information and guidance document as illustrated here, or you can also access it as you're completing the entry form by clicking the information symbol for each question. The information pop-outs also include relevant benchmarking question references. And I won't go through each question individual here, but don't hesitate if you've got questions as you proceed. In section 4, your case studies should be in line with one of the 8 award categories. And if you're submitting 2 case studies, they should be in different categories. There's also some criteria regarding finalists and winners from 2013. Winners are not eligible to resubmit their winning programme, but finalists, as long as they're able to demonstrate that significant progress has been made over the last 12 months, can resubmit the shortlisted entry for reconsideration in 2014. The category descriptors are included in the information and guidance, and again, I won't add to the presentation time by reading through each one individually now. But for those of you who have previously entered, let me highlight some changes to award categories for 2014. The Advancing Women Award, we've split this category to apply to large or small employers in 2014, and we're defining large employers as those with more than 1,000 members of staff. In addition, for large employers, if you're submitting case studies based on women's network activities, we're keen to understand how the network can demonstrate innovation in its approach or its integration. The Directing Diverse Talent Award remains focused on HR professionals as opposed to the Champion category, which recognises individuals who don't have diversity in their day job. However, where previously we stipulated that the individual should be a HR director, we've broadened the category to encompass exceptional HR managers and practitioners as well. We've also entered into a new partnership with the Global Award this year and are delighted to be working with UN Women UK. Therefore, in addition to internal employee-focused global programs, you may put forward global CSR initiatives which have an impact on your boardroom, supply chain, external communities or employees. Internal employee-focused initiatives will still need to span at least 3 countries, and if you are submitting a CSR program, it should focus on women's employment and economic empowerment. With regard to case studies, as with the questions in the previous 2 sections, we have best practice criteria that the assessors will use to score the case studies. And guidelines have been provided which map across from this scoring criteria. So they're intended to give you a framework to follow in your case study responses. There are 3 sets of guidance for case studies, depending on which category you selected, and this is clearly described in the information document and on the entry platform. I'd like to highlight an addition to the case study guidance in the Champion and Directing Diverse Talent categories. We've introduced a guidance point relating to how the individual demonstrates and promotes inclusive leadership. Inclusive leadership continues to be an important area of research for Opportunity Now, following our original report from Pioneer to Mainstream, and you can download an executive summary of that on the Opportunity Now website. I'll talk a bit about the Transparency Award now, which I mentioned earlier. It's an additional category. Due to the specific nature of the category and its assessment, it's a separate standalone award. So you can put forward a transparency entry in addition to any other case studies that you're submitting in Section 4. And you can also opt just to enter for the Transparency Award on its own as well. Opportunity Now has been working with the Government Equalities Office for the past 2 years to present this award. This is the first year that the entry schedules have been aligned, so it has the same deadline of the 13th of November and it uses the same online entry platform. The Transparency Award recognises organisations who are taking an active role in evaluating gender equality in their workplaces, who are taking action and publicly reporting on their progress. The award aligns with the Think Act Report initiative, which is a voluntary business-led initiative to promote greater transparency on gender employment issues. The initiative targets organisations in the private sector who employ 150 members of staff or more. Its focus is on the private sector as the public sector already has an established duty to promote equality. In order to be eligible to enter, organisations need to be signed up to the Think Act Report initiative. If your organisation isn't already signed up and you would like to do so, you can do that very easily online. There are 2 parts to the entry. Part 1 lists a number of categories which are aligned with the Think Act Report framework, against which you're asked to signpost information and metrics which your organisation currently makes available in the public domain. The signpost may include hyperlinks to content on your company website, or you can also upload public documents or reports which include this information. Part 2 comprises 3 questions which require a narrative response in order to explore your organisation's motivations for putting gender equality information in the public domain, the involvement of your leaders in public reporting processes, and how your organisation has benefited from public reporting. You can download a document which covers information about entering the Transparency Award from the Opportunity Now website, and once again this information is also included on the entry platform. For those of you who have entered in previous years, I'll just recap and run through the changes that we've made in 2014. So there's just 1 case study requirement this year rather than 2, but you do have the option to submit a second case study if you have another piece of work that you'd like to be considered for an Opportunity Now Excellence in Practice Award. Some of the award categories have been updated. The Advancing Women Award has been split to recognise large or smaller organisations. Directing Diverse Talent may now include exceptional HR managers and practitioners, in addition to HR directors, and the Global Award may now encompass global CSR programs which impact on women's employment and economic development. In the Champion and Directing Diverse Talent categories, an additional guidance point on inclusive leadership has been introduced. And the word count has been increased for Section 2, which is the workplace element, and this is now set at 3,000 words. Case studies have also been increased to 1,000 words. And once again, there isn't any leeway on the word count. If word count's exceeded, then the entry won't be accepted. The Transparency Award will follow the same entry schedule this year, and so the 13th of November deadline applies. In addition to the signposting information, there is now a narrative element of 3 questions, and the finalist stage will involve a live judging panel in 2014. And finally, the entry form is now online. In order to access the platform, you'll need a username and password, which you can obtain just by dropping me an email. There are several benefits for entrants and moving to this platform. It consolidates all of the information and guidance for the entry process so that you can access it whilst you're working on your submission. The platform will display your word count and help you to track that across each section. The total section word count in 2 and 3 appears at the bottom of the page. There isn't any limit on individual questions in these sections, although this is displayed, that's just for your information. In the case study section, however, you can only enter a maximum of 1,000 words into the response box, and you'll be prevented from entering any more. You can share the login details with other colleagues so that they can also contribute to the entry. Please note that it's possible for multiple colleagues to be logged in at the same time, however, so you may wish to be clear about which sections or questions contributors are working on if they're working simultaneously. You can save your updates as you progress and come back to your submission at a later date, and you can also download a PDF of your responses to save or circulate at any stage. So in terms of results, the list of the top employers for women in the UK will be taken from the 50 entries which obtain the highest scores across the whole of the entry form, so across all 3 scored sections. The list will be published in a special supplement in the Times newspaper. It will be unranked, so organisations will be listed alphabetically. And please provide the name of your organisation as you would want it to appear in print in the supplement on the entry form. The supplement will include company profiles and case studies from some of the top 50 organisations, and as I mentioned, there's also additional advertising opportunities in this supplement. We'll be able to let successful organisations know that they've made the list in late January, although this will be a strictly embargoed communication until the list is published later in April. Pre-release copies of the supplement will be distributed to the guests who attend the Opportunity Now Awards dinner on the 2nd of April, and then the supplement is circulated nationally in the Times on the 3rd of April. All of the organisations who are featured in the top 50 list will be entitled to use the 2014 logo for the following year. With regard to the awards, up to 3 entries will be shortlisted against each award category, and shortlisted organisations will be notified in late January. Finalists will be invited to attend a judging panel in central London in February, and each judging panel will be comprised of 3 independent experts who will select a winner in each category. Details of who's been shortlisted and the winners aren't announced until the night of the Opportunity Now Awards dinner, which is the 2nd of April at the Brewery in the City of London. Case studies from each of the finalists are included in the Opportunity Now Awards Case Studies booklet, which is distributed to guests at the dinner, and it's also featured as a downloadable PDF and appear on web pages on the Opportunity Now website. So finally, just a quick recap on the key dates for this year. The entry process is now open, and the deadline is the 13th of November. Unfortunately, due to the assessment schedule, there is no room to manoeuvre, so the deadline will be strict. So do make a note of that now. Assessment will take place from November and will be finalised in January, and will contact organisations with their individual results in late January. The awards results will come out first to allow finalists to prepare for their judging panels in February, and the top 50 notification will follow soon after that. Award winners are announced at the awards dinner. This is really the highlight of the Opportunity Now events calendar. Booking for this event will be available soon, and the usual early bird discount of 10% will be available for the initial booking period. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I'll check to see if any questions have come through now. and hopefully respond to those. We also have a frequently asked questions document on our website, so do have a look at that as well. We'll try and add to that throughout the process if we're getting regular questions which come up from people. So that's one to watch. Okay, we don't have any questions that have come through today, in which case we'll wrap up. Thank you very much for joining us. Please do get in touch with me if you have any questions spring to mind now or in the future, and we look forward to receiving your entries. Many thanks.